Let's jump to this story, which involves, I believe, it was a massive funding bill that it was $1.2 trillion spending bill, of which $4 billion that went to Israel. I'm not entirely sure. I want to make sure we fact check this one, but this is fascinating because more Democrats voted for it than Republicans, and it has led to Marjorie Taylor Greene filing a motion to oust Speaker Mike Johnson over the deal. A $1.2 trillion spending bill they call the minibus was released overnight in the wee hours of the morning that nobody gets to read. And Mike Johnson said, no, it's fine. It's fine. Democrats were like, we like what you're doing, Mike Johnson. And so Matt Gaetz is now saying this may be the end of Republicans having control in Congress. It may become a Democrat Speaker of the House after Marjorie Taylor Greene files to oust Mike Johnson. I just love the complete and utter disarray and ineptitude of the Republican Party. I don't blame Marjorie Taylor Greene at all. Actually, I am fine with her filing to vacate Mike Johnson. And I agree with Matt Gaetz, but I just don't see, if we're not, it's better that a Democrat actually is running the show than someone pretending to be a Republican. At least we can then be the opposition party, right?
So the American people are starting to see now that the politicians in Washington, D.C. represent other interests than their own constituents, that there are other things at play. None of this was popular. None of these things were popular. To some of the direct groups that are getting money, all the amount of earmarks, the amount of pork in there, sure. The locals will say, oh, yeah, my guy got this done. My guy got that done. You know, John Fetterman's like sending money to a podcast or something. But by and large, the huge amounts of spending, no, it's not popular. So why is it that then certain people just go along with it? Well, that's why they're selected for leadership. That's why those people are able to get into those positions. And then you have people like the Freedom Caucus, you have people in the Senate like Mike Lee and others who are calling it out, Rand Paul for years and years and years, and nothing ever changes because calling it out doesn't matter. Because again, just like I was saying that, like, you know, arguing with, you know, far communists is never going to get you anywhere. You have to use reciprocity. That arguing with these guys, this establishment, saying that, oh, you know, this isn't good for financial sense for us. This isn't good for the constituency. This isn't good for the country. They don't care. They're not there to represent you. They're there to represent their special interests. That's how they get leadership.
$4 billion in military aid sent to Israel in this bill. How did we go from a bill that was going to send 14 million, I believe it was, right? Was it 14 million? Or no, it was a billion. No, wait, what was it?
I think it was always in the billions.
It was always in the billions. The border bill, it was 14 billion.
Well, and the border is barely
Is that what it was, though?
And the border itself is barely even funded in this bill. And it definitely hasn't closed the border.
But we had that bill that was mostly Ukraine money. Was it 60 billion?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. The bill where the McConnell one, where they were combining the border and
after all of the bickering and fighting and refusal and everything, they just passed this stuff overnight. There's no country anymore, man.
No, I think what's happening is that we have been in World War III since 9/11, and it's a slow war. They don't want to declare it. They don't want to tell you, but they're just at war. And they are moving like they're at war. And so anyone that complains, they're just going to ignore it because we're at war.
We're in the looting phase.
We've been at war since forever. I mean, the Korean War, Vietnam.
The Patriot Act turned us inward.
The Patriot Act did a lot. But what did the Patriot Act do that you're concerned about?
Well, it made Americans fear that they could be squashed by their government if they speak out against them.
How? Like what specifically in the bill are you concerned
about? Like warrantless spying and things like that.
There's no warrantless spying.
There's lots of it.
They claimed they were never warrantless spying. The issue is not, in my opinion, the Patriot Act. There's a lot of bad things in it, of course. The issue is that the United States has been at war constantly, nonstop. We had Desert Storm in the early 90s.
Oh, no.
It's not just 9/11. They've been doing this endlessly.
9/11 changed. So much changed after 9/11. The Homeland Security, all these departments.
Homeland Security for sure through the Patriot Act.
Yeah, so much weird stuff got put into place and just pushed after that in the 2 years after 9/11.
It's fair to say that 9/11 did change the world because I think that it's clear that it did. But I think that the surveillance state that we live under now, it was baked in the cake with the information revolution, right? Like whether or not 9/11 happened, the iPhone was still going to come out. And the iPhone, the smartphone, the computer and social media in everyone's pocket with a microphone and a camera on it. That's what changed that's what changed security state and it changed the military industrial complex. It made social media and information technology a part of the military industrial complex. And it made everybody a node essentially in that security apparatus.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is essentially low intensity conflict.
Yeah.
And it's, this is a great example of, so this is kind of what we talk about, because there's this question that we get into in the book about what would you call what we're experiencing right now. And people have tried alternately to call it a cultural revolution. They'll say, well, wait a minute, but it's not like China because people aren't like marching in the streets.
But just because it's not like China doesn't mean that it's not a cultural revolution.
Well,
I think that, go ahead.
I'm leading up to it. No. And that's correct. That's exactly right. Because we can see elements. We see the struggle sessions. We can see all of these things going on that are very similar to what happened in the Chinese Cultural Revolution.
Pulling down of statues.
The iconoclasms. It's similar to the Bolshevik Revolution. It's similar to the French Revolution. We go through all of these and pull it out. And what we've actually determined is that in the same way, and it's amazing that you mentioned technology because it's exactly right. The same way that technology has transformed kinetic warfare, it's also transformed these revolutions that we're in. And so what we actually describe is that it's a low intensity conflict. It's an irregular revolution. And within that irregular revolution, there are multiple micro revolutions going on all the time. And micro revolutions are essentially miniature revolutions that can be like within 5GW irregular revolutions. I can launch a micro revolution at Tim Pool because he says something at on one of his shows, or a micro revolution can get launched against me because I give a speech at CPAC, and suddenly it's this tactic that goes on, and if the person falls for it, if the person breaks down, then they lose and they go out. And so it's this idea that the new technology has created a new warfare. This has already been turned into political irregular revolutionary warfare, and that's what we're living through. Because it's like you can't just you walk down the street, right, and people are saying, we're not in a civil war, we're not in a everything's fine, you can kind of go around. But if you walk down the street, and I do this a lot, I was doing it on Periscope yesterday down at the Jefferson Memorial, and I was just walking around going, hey, Trump won. Hey, so Trump won, and they would say, oh, well, it's starting to get dark. That's right. It is getting dark in America under this illegitimate president because Trump won. And so the point being is, and then you see the reactions from people, they get really upset.
Yeah.
And because you're not allowed to have that opinion. So if you say an opinion you're not allowed to say, well, what's the word for that? And so the phraseology we're trying to come up with it here is that it's essentially an irregular revolution. It is a thought revolution and all these other things. That's what we're in.
I used to call it a revolution of the mind, and I was very excited for it. In 2006, 2007, I was like, we are entering a new era of digital technology communication where presidents can communicate across the planet without Secret Service needed via video chat, and the whole world can watch them communicate. Time for a revolution of thought. But then I realized that's what Mao said, a revolution of the mind. The exact same words as what I was spouting out.
My question is,
the stuff, dude, the number of phrases that Americans utter that actually are directly translated to Chinese that were used in communist China. If people knew how frequently they're saying that stuff, they would blow their mind. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
There's one in the trailer for this Netflix thing where they're saying 革命无罪, 革命无罪, which means it essentially translates to the revolution is crimeless. The revolution is sinless. The revolution is perfect.
Which is to say, anything done in the name of the revolution is fine. So you can kill people, you can expropriate, you can do anything you want.
You can arrest landlords
that are not you can do anything you want to people that are not members of the party. And nowadays in the United States, we clearly have the party and not the party.
They said
and that's the way that it is.
The revolution will not be televised. That phrase was always bounced around in the 90s, 2000s. I was like, well, it's true. The revolution's on the internet.
But it's not even about that. Has anyone actually considered what that phrase meant when they were saying it?
The revolution will not be televised.
It means that they were committing acts of they were committing subversion. Against our institutions.
Right. Do you think that there can be no revolution? Because I think there is an attempt at many, like you're saying, sub-revolutions within this greater cultural revolution. Can we resist it without another type of revolution?
Yes,
or do we have to create our own?
No, people have to be aware. The problem that we're facing, the biggest problem that we have right now is bad Democrats, bad liberals, right? They think they're doing things that are liberal. They think they're doing the nice thing, but the nice thing is not always the thing that lines up with liberalism. And when you're a bad liberal, you're doing authoritarian things or supporting authoritarian ideas like censorship, like using the government against your political enemies, using basically shock troops to terrify the population, like rioting in the streets and stuff like that. Like, that's all stuff that communists have used historically. But the Democrats in the United States, first of all, aren't aware of communist tactics, which is why books like Jack's book are so important, and it's important for people to read them. And they're not aware of the fact that it's a subversive ideology. It is going to hide. It doesn't want to tell the average person that has a mortgage and 2 kids, hey, we're going to take away your property. Because that's what you have to do in communists. You have to
But they are.
You have to give up your property.
You have to arrest landlords.
Yeah,
They'll
completely.
arrest. Yeah, so we're at the arresting landlords phase of the irregular revolution. It's as you say. So we go through the phases of a communist revolution and a communist pre-revolution too, because there's all this pre-revolutionary revolution will not be televised stuff that goes on beforehand. But there's always the inciting motion and then the seizing of whatever it is, the property, the life, etc. You know, they block out your access to rights, and then finally the purging happens. So either the purging of the person, the arrest, execution, whatever it may be. But the biggest thing that we want to get across in this book is that, and it's to your point, I think it will get there, is that the only answer to any of this, and whether you're a conservative or a moderate or whatever, or a good liberal, is reciprocity.
Yep.
And conservatives absolutely needs to learn the word reciprocity. These people are coming for your homes. Literally in New York City, they're coming for, if you commit wrongthink, they'll come for your families. They're certainly coming for your children. I don't think anyone can argue with me at this point that they're coming for your children. They will take your children away if you disagree with them on certain issues. And so
they desire to convince your kids that they might be trans, and then you say, no, you're not. So that way they can say, well, guess what? Those are our kids now.
Right. And so if you're arguing with somebody who is that committed to their cause, and these causes, of course, attract people who are going to be the most loyal, because these causes, and we get into that in the book as well, like what causes a person to be this envious and angry. It's because they're life's losers and they would not be able to have any success in life outside of the revolution, outside of the regime, outside of power. That's why you see these, like, look at the Biden administration. Like, do you think any of those people, Karine Jean-Pierre or was it Admiral Levin or anything, would actually be able to have a successful career in the private sector doing something in the real world? Of course not. Absolutely not. That's why they need to be committed to the revolution.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.